Hey folks, this is your host Mandeep, and in today's tutorial, we're going to look at another scan. And the objective of this scan is to find stocks that go from red to green. We want to look for those stocks that where the open today is less than close of yesterday, but finally, the close is greater than the close from 1 bar ago or from yesterday. So we're going to look at four different conditions in this scan. And the first condition is that the percent change from 1 bar ago is greater than one, right? So comparing it to yesterday, the stock today closed at least 1% above. So 1% is the minimum. The open today is less than the close of yesterday. That's condition number two. The third condition is that the open today is less than the close of yesterday, but we want it to stay within 2%, right? So we don't want the open today to be greater than 2% of yesterday's close. And finally, we want to make sure the close today is greater than the close from yesterday, right? So basically, it opened in red but closed in green. So, I mean, my theory about creating any kind of a scan is that it shouldn't create, the output shouldn't be like in hundreds, right? So, because if the output is in hundreds, then it's really not actionable, right? So, any kind of a scan that you create, make sure that it has few stocks that are part of the scan or part of the result, so you can take action against them, right? You can use them for your day trading aspect, as an example. Because if you have like dozens of stocks, then you have to have some other criteria by which you do a further sub-selection in order to come up with the trade ideas that you want to undertake. And of course, irrespective of what the output is, you still need to wait for the right setup, right? So whatever setup you use to make your buying decision, make sure those you still end up adhering to, right? So as I said, the first condition that we discussed was that the percent change from 1 bar ago has to be greater than one. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an ad study, and then of course click on the edit, and then on the edit button again, and we'll go back and look for a study called percent change, right? So we'll look for percent change, and this typically defaults to like 14 days. But what we are talking about is like we just want to know the percent change from yesterday to today is 1%, right? So just change this to 1 is greater than or equal to a value, and we'll change that value to 1, right? Now let's just save this. Now what we want to do is we want to make this comparison from yesterday. So we'll hit on the edit button, and we'll do it in the ThinkoScript editor, and we'll say percent change, right, from 1 day ago is greater than or equal to 1. So we'll save this condition. That's your condition number 1. Now the second condition is that the open today is less than the close of yesterday, right? So what we'll do is we can just do it directly without using the automated process. What we'll do is we'll add a filter here, and instead of using the conditional visit, we'll just use the ThinkoScript editor and say the open is less than close of 1 bar ago, right? So that's your condition number 2. So wherever the stock closed yesterday, but today's open is less than that. So that's your condition number 2. Then we want to add another filter, and what we want to do is we want to say that the difference between close of yesterday and the open is less than 2%, right? We don't want it to like fall too far below. So what we'll do is we'll again do it manually. It's much easier to do that. And what we'll say is that the close from 1 bar ago, and subtract the open price today, and then divide by the close of yesterday, and then what we'll do is we'll just make sure that uh, this is in parentheses, so it makes it a little bit easier, right, to read. And then we'll do one more here and close parenthesis here. And so turn it to a percent is less than 2, right? So it's the difference between where it opened today and where it closed yesterday, the difference is less than 2%, right? So we'll add that condition. And finally, we'll add one more condition, which is that the close today has to be greater than the close from 1 bar ago, right? So add another study filter, and we'll do the same thing. Instead of using the conditional visit, we'll use a Thinkorscript editor and say close is greater than close from 1 bar ago, right? So that's your conditions that we've defined. Again, what I also like doing is, because I like trading stocks, which have decent volume, I'm going to add two additional conditions into it. So one of them is always related to volume. So I'll say average volume over the last 30 days is greater than 500,000, 500, 1, 2, 3, 500,000. And then finally, we want to look at the ATR, right? The average true range is greater than 3. So this gives you stocks that have some significant move during the day between the high and the low. So let's just click on that. So now we've created our conditions, and we're going to run the scan button on that and see what kind of stocks we come up with. So it came up with like Digital Turbine and the Playboy Group, right? So let's just take a look at these stocks, and we'll look at those on the daily chart, and we'll see if we coded this correctly by by looking at these stocks. So as you can see here, so the open today was less than the close, right? So that condition is satisfied. Again, you can compute it using a calculator that this difference is less than 2%. And finally, the close today is higher than the close of yesterday. So it met all of these criteria, right? So let's look at APPS and see if that also met the criteria in the same way. So as you can see here, this open today here is less than the close of yesterday, but we ended up closing above the close of yesterday. So these are the kind of stocks that you can take action on. Again, Friday was relatively a slower day because option expiry takes place. Now let me give you. Let's take a few look at a few ideas that actually worked on Friday. Let's go back and look at the 15-minute chart, and I'll show you a couple stocks that ended up doing well that were part of our list that we have, and this is the one that comes as part of the UTS trading system. So let's take a look at like BNTX as an example. As you can see, we had a buy right off the open, and then it closed at the 1 bar prior to the end. That's because you're day trading. Otherwise, this trade would be open, and we can always look at the report and see what kind of profits this made. As you can see, this had a nice like $996 profit. It opened at 6:45 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and then it closed like 15 minutes before we closed. Let's look at Documentum, which is also part of the day trading list. And you can see this also had a buy pretty much right off the bat on the 2nd bar, right? And we'll take a look at the report and see how well this did, and this did a decent profit as well. Let's take a look at Google that popped up, and Google is actually interesting even going forward. And you can see this also had a buy right off the 1st bar, and let's see how this ended up doing. So this is predicated on 100 shares, so it did almost close to 2,400 and $8,000 in profit over like 30 days. Now, if you look at the chart for Google on the day time frame, you can see this is where the stock popped up after the previous result. Since then, it has retraced, and we are back to that same level. So if this particular level of 2450 gets taken out and is confirmed, it might actually be a good trade. And we can also take a look at Costco, which also I think is interesting because it's also back to its all-time high. And if the all-time high is taken out, this could end up doing well. And a couple other stocks that I like are, one is Goldman Sachs, and this has been doing well, but this is not a great setup because this is, significantly removed from, the 9 and the 21 period moving average. So it'll be good for it to, come down to at least the 9 period moving average before you make it actionable. So I hope that you picked up sort of a new technique in terms of the scan, and you guys can follow the tutorial and create the scan yourself. And once this is done, you can also do a reverse, which is stocks that opened up in green, right, but close in red, right? So you just follow a reverse criteria on that, and hopefully it'll give you some practice on how to create these scans. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye bye.